Bonjour tout le monde. Quel plaisir d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. What a pleasure to be here with you all today. A few hours ago I spoke with the Governor General and confirmed for her that it is my intention of forming the next government. We just got through an election where Canadians made it very clear the kinds of things they want us to work on, and I'm looking forward to getting into it. Je viens d'avoir une conversation avec la gouverneure générale et j'ai confirmé mon intention de former le prochain gouvernement et de continuer à servir les Canadiens pendant les années à venir. It's been a busy week already, from phone calls with premiers to talk about their priorities, to conversations with President Biden, to, of course, on Saturday morning, welcoming home Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor to Canada, which was unbelievably good news. It was quite amazing to, after having thought about them and worked on their case and been there in my mind for them over the past 2.5 years, to actually see them in person was a very good day I think for all Canadians, but it was nice to be part of on the past weekend. I'm here this morning for a number of reasons. First of all, to announce to all of you that I have asked Chrystia Freeland to continue serving as Deputy Prime Minister and our Minister of Finance, and she has accepted. I am very pleased to be able to continue to rely on Chrystia as we do the big things that Canadians have tasked their politicians and their government to do in the coming years. I look forward to getting into it with her and with the other members of Cabinet who I'll be asking to join over the coming weeks. We will be swearing in Cabinet in the month of October, and we will be bringing back the House of Commons before the end of fall. The exact dates still to be worked out, but we are busy getting into the business of delivering on an ambitious agenda that Canadians laid out. Je suis très content aujourd'hui d'annoncer que Chrystia Freeland sera encore une fois de nouveau la vice-première ministre et la ministre des Finances du Canada. Nous avons beaucoup de pain sur la planche, alors nous allons nous mettre à travailler tout de suite pour livrer sur le plan ambitieux que les Canadiens ont choisi dans ces dernières élections. Nous allons faire l'assermentation du Conseil des ministres au mois d'octobre et nous allons ramener le Parlement à cet automne. Les dates exactes seront à finaliser dans les semaines à venir. I chose to make my first announcement a week after the election here at a vaccine clinic to emphasize that of all the different priorities we continue to have, getting through this COVID-19 crisis remains our very top priority. We're seeing right now in different places across the country significant struggles with this fourth wave, particularly in Alberta, and it looks increasingly like Saskatchewan as well. Our hearts go out to all folks who are dealing with extremely difficult situations because of this pandemic, because of this fourth wave. I can assure you that over the past week, officials at all levels of government have been engaged with their counterparts in Alberta and in Saskatchewan to offer any and all support we can offer, from equipment like ventilators that we've already begun sending out, to human resources, whether it's Canadian Armed Forces or Canadian Red Cross, whether it's facilitating the offers from other provinces who've offered to send folks to support. We will be there to support people in Alberta and Saskatchewan and anywhere across the country where people are continuing to face the challenges around COVID. But of course, the way through this pandemic, everyone knows, is to ensure that as many people as possible get vaccinated. We're up over 80% of eligible Canadians having received both doses of a COVID-19 vaccine, which is great news, but there is more to do. Here in this vaccine clinic today, I was able, first of all, to thank the incredible frontline workers from Ottawa Public Health who really have stepped up, not just these days, but over the past 18 months to ensure that people are getting vaccinated. But I also had the opportunity to chat with some people who decided that it was finally time to get their first dose, and I thank them for it. And it's, there are a lot of different reasons people are deciding to get vaccinated after having been unsure for a number of months, and I'm just so pleased that they're doing that. It was a combination of I need it for work, I'm doing it for my kids, I want to get back to the things I care about. These are all good reasons, and we need people who still haven't been vaccinated to choose to get vaccinated. We have, as of a few months ago, received enough vaccines for everyone who's eligible in this country. So please step up and do what you need to do to keep yourself, your family, your community, and indeed our country safe. We know that getting vaccination rates up is the way to ensure not only we're keeping our loved ones safe, but we're keeping our health systems from getting overloaded. We're keeping away from having to do further lockdowns in our communities, and we're allowing our economy and normal life to get back as quickly as possible. La grande priorité demeure la vaccination pour tout le monde. C'est pour ça que je suis ici aujourd'hui à une clinique de vaccination ici à Ottawa pour encourager les gens de continuer de se faire vacciner et pour remercier ceux qui travaillent sur ces programmes de vaccination depuis des mois et rappeler aux gens que c'est avec la vaccination qu'on va passer à travers. C'est pour ça que je suis content d'annoncer que nos priorités en tant que gouvernement vont commencer avec 5 choses concrètes qu'on va faire pour la vaccination. Tout d'abord, nous avançons immédiatement sur le mandat pour les employés du gouvernement fédéral qui devront se faire vacciner. On aura des annonces dans les jours et les semaines à venir là-dessus. Deuxièmement, tout le monde de 12 ans et plus à bord d'un avion ou d'un train va devoir être vacciné. On avance là-dessus. Troisièmement, on va établir un système de certification de vaccination pour les déplacements à l'international pour s'assurer que les pays partenaires à travers le monde vont pouvoir reconnaître et accepter des preuves de vaccination canadiennes. Quatrièmement, comme promis, nous allons être là pour rembourser les provinces sur les dépenses qu'ils ont faites sur les certificats de vaccination. On sait que ces passeports vaccinaux sont essentiels pour un retour à la normale pour le plus grand nombre de personnes et donc nous allons être là pour enlever les préoccupations financières des provinces pour ce programme-là. On va les rembourser pour cela. Et cinquièmement, on va préparer de la législation pour protéger nos travailleurs de la santé, pour s'assurer que quiconque harcèle ou intimide des travailleurs de la santé en fonction ou en route vers leur travail soit face à des peines criminelles. Vaccination is and continues to be a huge priority for us as a government, and that's why we're going to be moving forward on 5 clear things, commitments we made during this election as our first priorities. First off, we're going to ensure that the federal public service is vaccinated. There is a clear requirement of vaccination for anyone who works for the federal government. Second, we're going to make sure in the coming weeks that anyone 12 or older who wants to get on a plane or a train be fully vaccinated. Third, we're going to continue work on establishing international proof of vaccination so that Canadians who are fully vaccinated, who want to travel overseas, are fully recognized in their vaccination status when they travel. Fourth, we're going to foot the bill for provinces and territories who have moved forward on proof of vaccination certificates or vaccine passports, because we know that encouraging people to get vaccinated and protecting those who have gotten vaccinated is the key way through this pandemic and out of it. And fifth, we're going to keep good on our word to protect our frontline health workers who have stepped up for us these past many months, and ensure that anyone who harasses or intimidates them is faced with criminal sanctions. That's a commitment we made during this campaign, and it's something that Canadians want to see. On top of that, we have many other priorities that we're going to be working on, whether it's completing the child care agreements with the provinces so that $10 a day child care is a reality as soon as possible right across the country, which is both great for families, but also great for the economy and the recovery. We're going to be moving forward on 10 days paid sick leave for federally regulated areas and work with the provinces to make sure that they're stepping up on that in their jurisdictions as well. We're going to keep making sure that we're moving forward on housing and on supports for people on affordability and growing the economy. Nous allons continuer de nous concentrer sur l'économie, sur des places en garderie, sur l'aide au logement, sur les enjeux que je sais ont préoccupé énormément de Canadiens pendant cette élection. On va aussi se préparer pour la conférence à Glasgow sur les changements climatiques où nous avons des plans extrêmement ambitieux à mettre en marche sur lesquels on s'est fait élire dans cette dernière élection. Nous allons continuer là-dessus. We're going to prepare to go to Glasgow for the COP26 on the environment with ambitious commitments and continue to improve our opportunities to create jobs and careers for people in a greener, cleaner economy as Canada transforms its approach, and we support workers through that transformation. And finally, this week, we will be marking the very first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. We have celebrated September 30th as Orange Shirt Day for a number of years, but now it is also the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It'll be an important moment for all Canadians to reflect on both the historic legacy of harm that residential schools has created, but also the very current echoes in the present and in the future that those harms and those mistakes made by Canada in the past continue to deliver. So this Thursday will be an important day for reconciliation as we continue to make that a key priority for our government. Lots to do, lots of work ahead, but I'm very excited about it and very excited about getting back to work this past week alongside Chrystia and to come an extraordinary team of Liberal ministers and MPs. Merci beaucoup. Je suis content de prendre vos questions maintenant.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier ministre. On va commencer la période de questions avec David Concrete from CBC News.
Hi, Prime Minister. The cabinet that you'll be swearing in October, you have a net loss of 4 women cabinet ministers after this election. 3 were defeated and Catherine McKenna didn't seek re-election. Are you still committed to a gender equal cabinet, and would you drop men to make that happen or grow the size of your cabinet to allow for the new math?
One of the challenges that we always have as a Liberal Party in forming government is there are amazing, extraordinary candidates who get elected right across the country, and I will be seeking, as I always do, to ensure that there is a proper regional distribution, that there is a range of skills and diversity around the table, but it is a base starting point that we have gender parity in any cabinet I put together.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau, Chrystia de Radio-Canada. Maintenant que les Michaels sont au pays, plusieurs disent que c'est le temps de durcir le ton sur la Chine. Si on regarde Huawei, tous nos alliés l'ont banni, sauf nous. Je ne peux pas croire qu'il y a encore des études à faire au Canada sur la question. Allez-vous prendre vos responsabilités, nous dire à quel moment vous allez bannir Huawei ou prendre une décision à ce sujet-là?
Tout d'abord, effectivement, c'est une très, très bonne nouvelle de revoir Michael Kovrig et Michael Spavor au Canada. On a travaillé de façon extrêmement ardue sur cet enjeu-là depuis des années et on doit remercier nos alliés, nos partenaires à travers le monde qui sont restés solidaires, pas juste des Canadiens, mais de ces 2 Canadiens-là. Évidemment, on a maintenant des réflexions à faire par rapport à nos relations avec la Chine et avec le monde, y compris la question sur Huawei, et on va prendre la décision en bonne et due forme pendant qu'on est en train de travailler sur le plan pour le prochain mandat. Okay. Obviously, it's very good news that the Michaels have been returned to Canada, and I want to thank all the incredible public servants and diplomats and officials who worked unbelievably hard to get to this moment, as well as thanking our partners and allies around the world who stood strongly in solidarity with Canada and specifically with these 2 Canadians. Obviously, as we develop our plan for governing, as we pull together our positioning, this will have an impact, and we look forward to sharing a decision on many different issues, including on telecommunications and Huawei in the coming weeks.
Next question.
Prime Minister, you spoke about all the work that went into freeing the two Michaels, the personal gratification you felt in meeting them in real life. So why was the government successful in freeing the two Michaels, yet unsuccessful in the case of Hussein Shalil, the Uyghur human rights activist who's been detained in China for about 15 years?
There is always more to do. As a government, we have continued to stand up for human rights around the world, and we will continue to stand up for human rights around the world. I think in the case of the Michaels, the challenge of their detention for political reasons was something that galvanized both public opinion in Canada and around the world, and we were able to demonstrate that we are a country of the rule of law, and we never flinched on applying the fundamental rules of our justice system, of our approach on that, and we will continue to advocate for people who are wrongly imprisoned around the world, as we have for many years, as we will continue to.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, Raymond Filion de TVA. Je voudrais revenir sur le résultat de l'élection. Un autre gouvernement minoritaire, parlement presque identique à celui que vous avez fait dissoudre au mois d'août. Bien, les Canadiens regardent ça et se disent ça a été une perte de temps et un gaspillage de 615 millions de dollars. Est-ce que vous regrettez, M. Trudeau?
Non, pas du tout. Parce que, justement, les discussions, les débats qu'on a eus pendant cette élection ont démontré que les Canadiens ont choisi un gouvernement extrêmement ambitieux. On a un mandat pour aller encore plus fort, encore plus vite, pour contrer les changements climatiques et transformer notre économie. On va pouvoir continuer à avancer sur les places en garderie et les garderies à 10 $ à travers le pays. On va continuer d'investir pour bâtir un pays plus vert, une économie plus forte, plus innovatrice. On a démontré notre engagement par rapport à la réconciliation d'en faire encore plus, et à dire la vérité, j'ai vraiment hâte d'entreprendre toute l'ambition dont les Canadiens nous ont fait part pendant cette élection pour aller encore plus vite, encore plus loin sur les grandes priorités des Canadiens. I think it is very clear from the debates during this election and from the mandate given by Canadians that we get to move even stronger, even faster on the big things that Canadians really want. This election mattered, and the choice Canadians made to go even further and even faster on the fight against climate change, to go even stronger on reconciliation, including on economic reconciliation and creating opportunities for Indigenous peoples across this country, even as we deliver on things like drinking water and new schools, even as we move forward more ambitiously to support families with things like $10 a day childcare across the country. We're also going to be investing in the economy. I'm really excited about all the things that we're going to get to do as a parliament and as a government in the coming years. And I think Canadians see that this election was really important, not just for how we finish with COVID and the vaccination commitments that we've made, including today, but how we're going to build back a stronger future for everyone, which is the work we're going to get doing.
Next question.
Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. Prime Minister, do you intend to make any changes to the senior ranks of your office, particularly for the people who recommended that you call the election?
What we saw during this election was really big issues debated by Canadians, very different perspectives on how to move the country forward, and the decision Canadians ended up making sees us in government able to deliver on exactly those commitments around climate change, around supporting families, around affordability, around growing the economy, around reconciliation. I'm excited about doing that, and of course, as we renew our team to move forward, whether it's around cabinet or around staff, there are a lot of great people coming on board. There are a lot of great people going to be continuing that work.
Prochaine question.
Boris Proulx du Devoir. Monsieur Trudeau, je note que vous n'avez pas noté de date de retour au Parlement et de manière plus générale, les électeurs vous ont donné un mandat minoritaire. Est-ce que ça change quelque chose dans votre façon de gouverner si on ne veut pas se retrouver en élection très bientôt?
Ben, je pense que c'est très, très clair que les Canadiens ne s'attendent pas à se retrouver en élection bientôt. Nous avons vu que la grande majorité des Canadiens sont en faveur de plus d'actions pour contrer les changements climatiques, de plus d'efforts pour assurer que le coût de la vie soit abordable, de lutter contre la crise du logement, d'aider avec des places en garderie, de continuer nos ambitions sur la réconciliation. Et nous allons travailler ensemble avec d'autres partenaires dans la Chambre pour livrer, parce que je sais qu'il n'y a pas un politicien à Ottawa qui pense que les Canadiens voudraient des élections bientôt. Donc, nous allons travailler ensemble et nous allons livrer pour les Canadiens.
Next question.
Althea Raj, the Toronto Star. You did not win as many votes as Mr. O'Toole. This is now the second election where another political party actually wins more votes than you. You've spoken about reaching out to my colleague in French about the other opposition parties who are ideologically aligned with you. But is there a message that you have taken from this last election on the fact that more people voted for Aaron O'Toole, and perhaps the fact that 800,000 Canadians voted for the PPC? And how might that change the way you govern?
I think one of the fundamental responsibilities of any Canadian Prime Minister is to make sure that all Canadians are seeing themselves in not just Parliament, but in the government and the positions that we put forward. As after any election, a Prime Minister and a government needs to think about the people who voted for them, but also about people who didn't vote for them, and make sure that in the decisions we're taking, we are delivering for all of them. I was pleased that after this election we now have representation again in the prairies in Alberta. We're going to continue the important work of reaching out to people right across the country, of trusting in science and ensuring that people are trusting in their institutions as well. There is work to do. Certainly we saw the kinds of polarization that was rearing its ugly head during this election, and there are many things we're going to need to do to make sure that we are standing strong for our values, for our principles, for what is right, while ensuring that helps bring people along in the right direction as well.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. J'aimerais vous entendre sur les transferts en santé. Je voulais savoir, est-ce que vous vous engagez à rencontrer les premiers ministres des provinces et des territoires avant la fin de l'année? Et qu'est-ce que vous allez leur offrir? Qu'est-ce que vous allez mettre sur la table? Est-ce que ce sera le 25 milliards de dollars avec conditions?
On a effectivement, on s'est commis à 25 milliards de dollars de plus en aide pour les systèmes de santé à travers le pays. Nous sommes très contents d'offrir ces investissements pour la santé mentale, pour en finir avec les délais et les défis accumulés à cause de COVID, mais aussi au fil des années dans les files d'attente, et aussi pour embaucher plus d'infirmières et de médecins qu'on sait sont vraiment nécessaires. Mais comme je dis depuis plus qu'un an, on va être là pour augmenter les transferts en santé vers les provinces, et j'ai hâte de m'asseoir pour en discuter. Mais comme j'ai aussi dit pendant les élections, nous attendons à un niveau de transparence et de redevabilité. Ce ne sera pas sans condition, mais on va discuter avec les provinces sur comment nous allons pouvoir s'assurer que les gens à travers le pays reçoivent les services nécessaires avec les investissements des dollars des contribuables.
Next question. Sorry.
Yeah, I've been very clear from the beginning that we know there is need for more investments in our healthcare systems across the country, which is why we put forward the most ambitious plan on health transfers to the provinces, which include $25 billion over the coming 5 years for priorities that everyone recognizes. More support for mental health treatments and services, more supports with more doctors and nurses, and immediate injections to end the backlogs that have accumulated in surgeries and treatments across our system because of COVID, but also that existed before. So we will be there to increase investments in health, and I look forward to sitting down with the premiers to discuss these issues. But as I've said a number of times, we are going to be working together in partnership to expect results. That means there will not be zero conditions, but they will be expectations that we're able to work together to deliver concretely for Canadians with taxpayer dollars.
Prochaine question.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Ryan Templeton, National Post. The Quebec government is laying off 17,000, potentially laying off 17,000 workers, healthcare workers, because they haven't been vaccinated. You have a similar mandate for the public service. Are you prepared to lay off tens of thousands of workers? And can you say in detail how this process is going to work for public workers who you mandated have a vaccine?
I have announced today that it is one of our priorities, as I said before the election, that all workers in the federal public service be vaccinated. The public service and the unions have been working on that over the past number of weeks. We will have more to say when we make the announcement in the coming weeks.
Next question.
Sorry. Good morning, Prime Minister. Kevin Gallagher, CTV National News. The situation with COVID in Alberta and Saskatchewan is becoming quite dire. I know that you said you're sending some ventilators. There's about 8 ICU nurses that the federal government's managed to send to Alberta, but that simply might not be enough. At what point in time does the federal government need to intervene when provincial policies are costing Canadian lives?
I made a simple promise to Canadians at the beginning of this pandemic that we would have their backs as long as it took, whatever it took. And that, of course, continues to apply in Alberta and Saskatchewan and anywhere where people are still struggling with terrible impacts of this pandemic. Like I said, our officials at multiple levels have been reaching out to Alberta and to Saskatchewan to offer any and all help, from Canadian Red Cross to military to extra equipment to airlifting in nurses and doctors from other jurisdictions who've offered. We are there to support people going through an extremely difficult time in Alberta and perhaps in Saskatchewan as we see things increase there. That's why I've asked my office to reach out directly to the Premier's offices, and I hope to be speaking with Premier Kenney tomorrow and Premier Moe soon as well, to again reiterate our commitment to being there to support the people of Alberta and Saskatchewan who are facing an extraordinarily difficult, heartbreaking situation right now.
Next question.
David Aiken, Global News. Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Coming back to Huawei, I wonder if you could just give us one good reason to the many Canadians who are confused. Why would we allow them in the country? As I think Chrystia said, our allies have said no to Huawei. Give us one good reason why they're still being considered.
We have actually seen that many Canadian telecommunications companies, if not all of them, have started to remove Huawei from their networks and are moving forward in ways that doesn't involve them as a company. We continue to weigh and look at the different options, but we will be no doubt making announcements in the coming weeks.
Next question.
Campbell Clark, The Globe and Mail. Prime Minister, you campaigned extensively on stronger vaccine mandates. You even proposed in your platform legislation that would protect employers that want to impose vaccine restrictions. A lot of those companies, or at least some of those companies, would like to see provincial governments do that. You've talked about the problems in Alberta and Saskatchewan. So do you think the premiers are doing enough to impose vaccine mandates? And do you think there's a point at which the federal government, which has a constitutional responsibility for peace, order, and government, steps in and says, we have to do this?
Campbell, I've been asked variations of that question from the very beginning of the pandemic, when provincial governments made various decisions that were different one to the other. I was regularly asked, do I approve of this measure? Do I approve of that measure? And I think what Canadians want to see every step of the way is everyone working together and being strong on this. For example, on the vaccine certification, proof of vaccine passports, the federal government isn't there to impose on provincial governments what they have to do, what they need to do, but we've removed one of the big barriers and saying, we'll foot the bill for it as you want to move forward. And that has encouraged many provinces to move forward with proof of vaccine certifications. I think this federation works best when we're all working together, and I think, quite frankly, voters, both at the federal level and provincial level, are able to make their own decisions as to whether their leaders have been up to the challenge of keeping them safe or not. But as a federal government, we will continue to unequivocally be there with all the tools at our disposal to stand up for people who need help during this pandemic. That's part of what we've done. And indeed, as Chrystia can remind you, when we designed supports for businesses and individuals, if Alberta were to choose to take further steps and go into a lockdown, federal supports for businesses, for individuals would kick back in, and we'd make sure that we were there to support people. So we're making it easy for provinces to follow the best public health guidance that they possibly have. That's the role Canadians want to see from their federal government, not picking fights, pointing fingers and laying blame.
Prochaine question.
À propos de la vaccination obligatoire pour les fonctionnaires fédéraux, par exemple, comment ça va fonctionner tout ça? Est-ce qu'ils devront montrer une preuve vaccinale ou leur parole, ce sera suffisant? Et ceux qui refusent, est-ce qu'ils seront en congé sans solde? Est-ce qu'ils vont perdre leur emploi? Vous n'avez jamais été clair en campagne là-dessus. Pouvez-vous nous préciser ça, s'il vous plaît?
Je peux vous dire que c'est des très bonnes questions sur lesquelles on est en train de travailler, sur lesquelles la fonction publique et les syndicats ont travaillé depuis plusieurs semaines, justement parce qu'ils savaient que ça s'en venait. Et on va avoir une annonce à faire dans les jours, la semaine à venir, qui va clarifier tous ces éléments-là. Mais on s'attend à ce que ce soit ce qu'on dise, que ceux qui travaillent pour la fonction publique fédérale devront être vaccinés.
Prochaine question.
Rebonjour. Est-ce que vous comptez gouverner pendant 4 ans sans déclencher des élections?
J'espère. Certainement que les Canadiens ont donné des indications qu'ils voulaient un gouvernement qui travaillait sur les grands enjeux en partenariat avec d'autres et c'est exactement ce que nous allons faire. My intention is to continue to deliver to Canadians the ambitious mandate that they voted us in on, to work with other parties to make sure we're delivering on things that matter to Canadians, from the biggest things like the fight against climate change and ending COVID, to smaller but key things for a number of people like the banning of conversion therapy, which is something that many parliamentarians on our side of the House feel very strongly about and is a commitment that will move forward. But I am intending to govern as long as Parliament gives us confidence to do so.
Prochaine question.
Colton Pearl, CTV News. Children are one of the most or at-risk populations in the entire country for COVID-19. The U.S. FDA is now reviewing Pfizer data for children aged 5 to 11. When will Canadian parents be able to protect their children?
We are as well ensuring that all our public health officials, that Health Canada, that the Immunization Task Force is reviewing the data that comes in. We know it is a pressing need to get kids from 5 to 11 vaccinated, and we're going to make sure that it is safe and effective. But I know I'm one of those parents of a 7-year-old who wants his kids to get vaccinated as quickly as possible, and that's certainly what we're looking for. But science and rigorous analysis will, as it always has, guide our decisions on that.
Prochaine question.
Monsieur Trudeau, en 2019, vous avez dit prendre acte du fait que les Canadiens vous ont donné une minorité. En 2021, aux questions juste maintenant, vous n'avez pas mentionné de changement dans votre façon de gouverner. Vous dites par contre que vous voulez rester 4 ans. Êtes-vous capable de nommer une seule chose qui va changer dans votre 3e mandat?
On va continuer de travailler, de vouloir travailler avec les autres partis comme on l'a fait et j'ai bien hâte de pouvoir livrer justement sur ces plans ambitieux que nous avions présentés aux Canadiens qui sont alignés effectivement avec beaucoup des priorités d'autres partis, que ce soit sur les changements climatiques, sur la réconciliation. Les Canadiens s'attendent très clairement à ce que notre Parlement travaille ensemble de façon collaborative. C'est exactement ce qu'on va faire.
Prochaine question.
You've said that mandatory vaccinations for travel is a priority for your government, but as you know, people are already booking tickets months in advance. So what details and concrete advice can you give them so that they're not caught unawares when it's time for their flights and their train rides?
If you want to or are planning on getting on a plane or a train in the coming weeks or months, make sure that you and all members of your family over 12 years old have gotten vaccinated and are getting your second shot if you haven't already, because you will not be able to travel on a plane or a train in Canada if you are not fully vaccinated. J'ai été très clair là-dessus depuis des semaines et des semaines que nous allons exiger que quiconque embarque dans un avion ou dans un train au Canada soient pleinement vaccinés. Alors, si les gens ont fait des plans pour aller en vacances ou pour aller voir leurs proches de l'autre côté du pays dans plusieurs semaines, ils doivent s'assurer qu'ils soient pleinement vaccinés.
Prochaine question.
Sir, you've said several times this morning in the press conference that you feel Canadians give you a mandate to work harder on climate change, on a lot of your priorities, but they returned you in a minority government again. More of them voted for the Conservative leader again. I'm wondering why you feel you have a strengthened mandate when you're coming back with basically the same number of seats.
Because the discussions that we had during this election campaign were significant on very big things. We put forward a plan to go even faster and harder and deeper on fighting against climate change, to do even more on reconciliation, to do even more on supporting families, whether it's seniors or young families with childcare or countering the housing crisis. And Canadians were very clear that they want those progressive, big, bold ideas to be delivered by their parliament and by their government, and that's exactly what we're going to work on.
Next question.
I'd like to go back to vaccine hesitancy. So far, the language coming from your government and your party has been about mandating vaccines or denying access to workspaces or extracurricular activities. But is there a plan to help convince people who are hesitant to get vaxxed to get vaxxed as opposed to just denying them access to life?
I'm a little dismayed, Althea, that you haven't noticed that over the past 4 or 5 months, that's exactly been our approach as a government, that we make sure that we are reaching out to communities, that we're reaching out within language, convincing that we do mobile vaccination clinics that have been in communities, that have been responded to people where they are, and that's one of the reasons we are steadily seeing an uptake in vaccines across this country. And indeed, whether or not it's working according to you, Canada remains one of the very top countries in the world in terms of levels of double vaccination. Now, yes, there is more to do, and we will continue to reach out to communities, to convince people to get vaccinated. That's something we will do in all sorts of different ways, but they will include, as the individuals I spoke with today who finally decided to get their first doses said, I need it for work. My kids finally convinced me to do it. I want to travel again. These kinds of things are also part of the package, and that's what we will work in all these different ways to make sure that as many Canadians as possible are kept safe, because it is through getting as many people vaccinated as possible that we get not only Canadians to be safe, but we prevent further lockdowns, like we're seeing right now, the potential of in Alberta, that we allow our economy to come back stronger and quicker.
We'll take one last question.
Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. Prime Minister, you called the election in the middle of a pandemic. You crisscrossed the country traveling. You were unable to grow your number of votes. Voter turnout was lower. You returned to the same parliament. Why are you staying on as leader?
I think Canadians were very clear that on going stronger on the fight against climate change, on continuing to make sure that life is more affordable for Canadians with an ambitious plan on housing, with an ambitious plan to fight climate change, with an ambitious plan on reconciliations. Those were the things that Canadians made clear choices by voting for progressive parties in this election. Even with all the very clear choices on offer for Canadians, they returned to Parliament with a mandate to do big, ambitious, progressive things for Canadians, and I can't wait to get into it.
Thank you. This is what ends today's press conference.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde.